Marion, and this is Let's Travel. As more people are getting vaccinated, we want to get back to traveling. But what does the future of travel possibly look like? I had a very interesting and inspiring conversation with two tourism experts who reinvent the way they work and live, Nick Pulley and my friend Aaron Smart in the United Kingdom. I am very happy to present episode 6. So good morning. Hello, Aaron. Hello, Nick. Thank you so very much for joining me on Let's Travel. I'm very excited to have you guys. It's Selective Asia in Brighton, United Kingdom, England. And welcome. Nick, could you tell me a bit more about Selective Asia and who you guys are?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thanks. First of all, thanks very much for having us on the show, Marion. It's a real pleasure. And I know that obviously you're a friend of Aaron's in the past, but this is from the past rather. But this is our first time of meeting, so very nice to meet you. Selective Asia is a company I started in 2006. At the time, it was in London, but I very sort of quickly moved down to Brighton, and Brighton has in time become a pretty key part of our DNA. And Selective Asia is a specialist tailor-made bespoke travel operator. We focus only on Asia. Initially, when I started the company, we operated in just 4 destinations across Asia, so Southeast Asia, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. And over the past 15 years, we've expanded quite considerably, not just in the destinations that we travel to, which is at around 19 at the moment, but also in the size of the company. So no longer me in my bedroom, but we up at the beginning of 2020, we were a team of over 30. We're now not quite the same size for reasons which will be familiar to all your listeners, no doubt. But we're still a very, very strong team, and one that I massively enjoy working with on a daily basis.
Talking about March 2020, actually in England it may have been a bit earlier.
Yep.
Our world stopped. Tourism just came to a dead stop for the pandemic reasons. What was the immediate impact for Selective Asia?
Well, I think we were actually on the. Thank you. I think we were potentially on the sharp end of the stick with the pandemic originating in Asia. So we were ahead of the curve, I think, in that sense, and with our connections and our partners in Asia, we were hearing this coming. We were hearing what was coming on the wind, potentially earlier than other industries, for example. There's been a lot said about March and April 2020. For us, the initial impact really was rescuing our clients. So we had some very nervous people who were due to travel out to places like Vietnam and Thailand. We had some potentially even more nervous people traveling in places like Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia. And that was really our initial focus for probably a number of weeks, was last minute postponements, last minute cancellations, and the slightly more stressful job of getting people home. We were ahead of the curve in a number of destinations due to our local partners and the information that we were getting. So we had and Nick will remember this fairly well. We had a day we look back on called Super Sunday, where we were desperately trying to get people cross country in Sri Lanka, across state borders in India, ahead of lockdowns and forced quarantines. So I mean that for me is the standout memory of that time, and it isn't hyperbole to say it was very much like a military operation, and I will forever look back with pride and and potentially a little bit of terror for those weeks. We did an incredible job.
I'm laughing a little bit nervously alongside Aaron there, everything he's been saying, because I remember it very well, and it's with a real mixture of emotions, certainly. Huge amount of pride. It was very, very high energy. Things were changing so incredibly quickly, and it's not an exaggeration when we say we were taking people in the back of tuk-tuks across diagonally across Sri Lanka to get them to an airport before it closed and wouldn't reopen again for months. We had to literally hijack a client off a train in India because had they got out of the station at the other end, they would have been put into quarantine immediately. It was really, really high energy, and it was, the team really came together. It was we decided to form quite a small core team to focus on all the extraction work, and you could see there was real envy from those team members that weren't able to be part of it. We need to keep it concentrated, and it made sense to do so, but everyone wanted in on the action. So it's there wasn't a lot of sleep for a few weeks, but it was a very, very rewarding job.
After the rescues and the extractions to get people home safely, there was obviously absolutely zero business for a lot of us for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, how did you use that time? What happened to your work space?
Well, first of all, we were all back at home by then. We had emptied from the office, and so that was a huge shift for us, and that took quite a lot of adjustment. We'd never, any of us, worked remotely even for a day before, and so when I look back now, just over a year ago, and I think to the first couple of months, we were still doing a conference call to each other as opposed to a Zoom call in the first month or two. That's how amateur we were at remote working. Something I'm very happy to say we've got considerably better at. But what was interesting about once we're through that extraction stage, the tempos dropped quite considerably. We are all now looking around, going, "This is real. This is here for some time now." And there was a huge amount of thinking going on. But one of the overriding thoughts for me, sort of weirdly early on, was just there was a great opportunity for us here. There was a great opportunity for us to reset. Despite Selective Asia having had all the successes it had in past years and the growth that we had, bigger isn't necessarily always better. And we had certainly got to a point where it was feeling a little bit like we were going backwards. This is pre-pandemic. We were then very fast going backwards when the pandemic started, obviously, but we had sort of plateaued somewhat. And once the dust had settled off the extractions and we were coming to terms with the fact that, business wasn't going to be the same again for a very long time, immediately we started to think in ways that, what can we do with this time? How do we use this time to its, to best effectiveness, as it were? And so we set about really unpicking the business at that point and starting to get into what we'd like to see change going forward.
Aaron, do you have something to add to this? What were the important aspects in looking at your lives from a business point of view, but also from a balance point of view, general satisfaction? We're all talking about how this has changed us on a human level worldwide. I mean, this has been the most shocking experience to our generation. Our grandparents dealt with the world wars and such. We have never had anything of this impact. How did that affect you guys?
No, you're absolutely right. The magnitude of the pandemic, I think, is still very much to be recognized, and we'll be dealing with it for an awfully long time to come. I think echoing Nick's point from a moment ago, I think we both used this word within about 24 hours of each other. We were perversely excited by the opportunity that it forced us into, and I think we Nick and other members of the team recognized that without the pandemic, and obviously it's not something we would ever have chosen to do voluntarily, but it gave us an opportunity to look at things from the ground up. I think also on a slightly more personal level, it allowed us to go away. At one point we closed the business down. So once the extractions were complete and once things had settled and the pace had slowed down, we decided to close the business for the month of May, just so that we could have, we could get some sleep and we could kind of recharge the batteries for the future, which was incredible. But it also allowed us to reconnect with family. I've worked in travel for over 15 years, and we just worked in the way that we'd always worked. You go to the office, you do a job and you come home. And we loved what we did and what we do. But having that space and that time and looking at things through a slightly altered prism, I think allowed us all, from both within the business and without the business, to reevaluate priorities. To make time to spend with kids or with family or with loved ones or with friends. And I think we grabbed that opportunity with both hands, and it's something that has stayed with us in the last several months. It's something that's been at the heart of what we've been trying to do at Selective Asia, and it's become a real priority.
The thought quite quickly went a lot further than that as well, didn't it? It wasn't just about being there at the right time to pick up kids from school, which is obviously important to a lot of people, but it goes beyond that, and it's actually just simply working at a time that suits you. It may just simply be you're not a good morning person, you want to work in the afternoon, or vice versa, whichever way it is. I know you get up very early, Marion, because we've been having these calls at opposite ends of the pond, haven't we? But it sort of, it stretches quite a way down, and as you start to sort of think more and more about it, I think people did start to sort of have this wake-up call of, I've been going into an office at 9 o'clock, I've been leaving at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and I've had this formulaic half-hour lunch where it's a bit, it's sort of suddenly started to dawn as being a bit crazy, frankly. From a business perspective, I think we had just become automatic. We'd just fallen into this sort of this rhythm that didn't really make sense. And I've spoken on a couple of occasions and written an article even about it. For us, and this obviously won't apply to everyone, but for us, it became really obvious very quickly that what needed to happen was we just needed to stop, and we needed to rethink. And you can't redesign a business, and you can't reimagine a business when you are still on the hamster wheel and feverishly trying to get every bit of business that you can and continue to sort of make profit and so on, which are obviously very core parts of doing business. But actually, if you really want to take stock of the situation and dream big, then that all needs to stop. And for a very, very, the pandemic is huge, and no generation would wish that on another generation. So I'm not suggesting that for a second, but it's happened. We can't do anything about that. So we may as well take the opportunity that's been afforded to us. So I don't celebrate the pandemic, but I think I will one day look back and be grateful for one of the opportunities it created for us.
How are you using this opportunity? You're the founder of Selective Asia.
Yeah.
It's your baby.
Yep.
And how did that affect? What kind of boss were you before? How are you changing as a boss?
You'd have to ask Aaron that. I was always very proud of having working with a really, really great team of people. Really genuinely, it was a room of friends, and that's been fantastic. But I was pretty controlling, I should imagine. I was very. We were really invested in growth and success, and we loved it when we won awards, and we loved it even more when clients fed back to us what a great trip they'd had. So I was hungry for all of that. I had also sort of long been a very avid reader of sort of new ways of working and a lot of books and blogs and so on in that sort of sector. And I was always very jealous actually of it when I was reading these books, because I was going, well, this is just wonderful. These sort of scenarios you hear where people pick unlimited holiday, work from where they want, when they want, and so on. And I always just felt it doesn't apply to us. And I've heard so many people say that over the years, going, it makes for really good reading, but it simply doesn't apply to us. So one of the very, very fortuitous things that happened early on was I met a guy called John Barnes through a mutual friend, and John helps organisations work differently. And so we had a really, really great conversation, immediately hit it off. I immediately knew John was the right person to work with. I'm very grateful for the fact he said he would work for us. So he came in and sort of joined the team in a consultancy basis and set about helping us strip down to absolute base foundations again, build back up with no hierarchy. And that's at the very core of things. So what John's focused on is helping us communicate really well as a team. And that's obviously whilst we're all working remotely. So that's been hugely influential. Part of that is technology. Part of that is simply the way we work with each other, the way we structure meetings and so on. And the other part is this removal of hierarchy and this encouragement to self-manage and self-organize. And I'll pass over to Aaron at this point, because Aaron is one of these, one of these team members that is now self-managed and self-organizing, as opposed to being managed previously, which would have been where I was sat.
Aaron, what
I
does that
think,
look like for you in daily life?
well, I think Nick's been a little bit hard on himself in regards to his past life as the boss, so to speak. One of the many reasons I joined Selective Asia was it was a relatively flat structure, and we were all pre-pandemic, we were all encouraged to bring ideas and to have a handle on driving our own destiny at the company. But ultimately, a lot of things came to a bottleneck when they came to Nick's desk, because he was one person. So ideas were out there and opportunities were out there, but they often came to they often took an awfully long time to come to fruition. So I think one of the really big changes is, as Nick said, the removal of hierarchy and the empowerment of the entire team. So we've done away with we've essentially done away with job titles. We work as part of projects, various different projects. We work asynchronously, which has been a real game changer for me, because there are times when as you well know, Marion, I've got 3 kids. They can be unpredictable, but it's great for me to be able to go away and spend an afternoon with the kids, and then come back in an evening and pick up on some work that colleagues have done earlier in the day, that I can then add to on an evening. We've worked out ways of working that don't need us all to be in the same room, which is impossible, but not even necessarily on the same time schedule as it were. So all of these things I think have been. There's been times when I've been really stressed, and it's a very different working environment, but there's been real excitement and real enthusiasm for all of us within the team to step outside of our traditional roles and to improve our skills in different areas. And I don't think there's a single person on the team who hasn't excelled at a number of different things that we wouldn't have expected them to 13, 14 months ago. And that's been a real revelation.
There's
that
a lot of
it's something I've long thought, and I know Nick agrees with.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, Nick, what results do you see? Ultimately, a company has to function. This big discussion now is like workplace happiness, work-life balance, more taken out hierarchy. But ultimately, if there's no money coming in, how do you make it work, and what results have you seen at this point? It's a huge learning curve for people who've been employed their whole lives.
It's a tricky one to answer, because unfortunately we're still not seeing any money coming in. So it's we haven't really got a fair test ground. What I'm very confident of saying is that because we went about things the way that we did, and we took the time to strip everything back and build back up slowly, I feel confident that once our previous day-to-day business sort of starts more firmly, and we still have bookings coming in. They're just they're few and far between in comparison to previously, and more importantly, we don't have any bookings traveling still, and that's what we really need to see. But what I see 15 people really empowered, and the energy around the room is, and this is a virtual room, of course, the energy is phenomenal. And Aaron quite correctly sort of made reference to the point earlier, this bottleneck that previously happened at Selective Asia, and I was the bottleneck. And it's because ideas come through and they get stuck. They don't need to come to me anymore. When a project, everyone's volunteering what projects they're working on, and incidentally, sales is a project. So and we developed an inter-project sort of traffic light system, if you like. So every week we review how much work's required on any of the projects. And one of those projects, for example, is B Corp, which we're in the assessment process of. Another one of them is designing a new sales process. Another one of them is internal company communication. And there's a handful of others. And each week we'll review how many pairs of hands, as it were, how much focus each of those projects requires. And so as sales comes up, sales is firmly on green, and another project may go to red provisionally, for example, to allow that. So we've got a much better understanding of the pulse of the company than we previously did. And certainly as a company, 14, 15 months ago now, if you asked any of us what our aim was, if you like, it would be to get as many sales as we can this month, or to make as many great holidays as we can this month, would be a better way of putting it in our case. We're not sort of solely financial driven in that sense, but yeah, it's to maximize. And we think about things really differently now. We just do across the team. We're much more interested in client contentment and our own contentment, I hasten to add. We're very, very focused. We've completely revisited our commitment to sustainability, and with redrawing up our values and our purpose in previous months. That's so much. I mean, it's always been a huge focus for us, but it is now at the absolute heart of the decision making that we're doing, which has been wonderful. And it's about teamness, as it were, and ensuring that everyone else on either side is happy and is doing the things that they want to do, as well as driving the business forward. And that's been really, really, it's just been a beautiful journey to be part of, I suppose. And the proof is in the pudding. Obviously, we need, ask us in a year how it's going, when hopefully those sales and those travel is going ahead. But I'm confident that we're going to be a far stronger team for it.
And you mentioned just now, and we also talked about this in our previous conversation when we just got to know each other a little bit, the satisfaction and happiness level on all sides.
Yeah.
You guys as a team, your customers, obviously, but also people in the destinations. You are taking people to countries that are socioeconomically much more disadvantaged than we are in our first world countries. And you are making huge changes. What exactly does that look like? What can you visualize that and give me more information on what actually happens on the ground?
Well, I think one of our values has always been the people that we work with, in both the sense of clients as well as our friends and colleagues in Asia and the communities that we visit. It's always been a really big part of what we do. I think we've just, as with other projects, we've gone back to the real core of what that means to us, and we've made the decision that will be key in any further decisions. So it underpins, it's the foundations of what we will build going forward. Is there's no need to shy away from the fact that in order for a business to be successful, we have to sell holidays and we have to make money. But we won't be, we won't be. That won't be our sole focus. It will be the quality of the product that we sell. It will be the happiness and the benefit that brings to local partners and to clients and to ourselves. And we've drawn up forgive me, Nick, I wasn't part of this project, but I think it's 6 key values.
Yeah.
We've defined who we are. And that then seeps into everything that we do. And it's conversations that I have with colleagues day in and day out. We refer back to those values because whilst they've always been part of Selective Asia, the act of defining them and writing them down, I think, has been transformative. I think it's given us a real definition.
It's another one of the advantages of this huge sort of hard stop that we've been through. It gives us as well, because I would say that we've always been a reasonably values-led business, and I would say we're now a very, very strong values-led business, as it were. We've got a very clearly defined purpose, which has been drawn up by everybody. It's and that's very important. It's not just my outlook on life, as it were. It's everyone within the business, and we've obviously got this. The last 14 months has brought us even closer together, and I wouldn't have even thought that was possible, but it clearly has. And what's really important for all of us now is that we take each of these factors: our client happiness, our partners and local destinations happiness and welfare, as well as our own, and also, you know, success of the business. But we put these things on an equal pedestal as excess pounds and dollars, as it were, and that's really, really important, because as we sort of build back up now, we're auditing all of our product, and we'll be taking a lot of stuff out of there which now we feel quite strongly shouldn't have been there. Let's say, you know, we perhaps got a little bit, you know, influenced by a client's preferences, or by a previous partner's preferences, or whatever it may be. We're also auditing all the hotels for their sustainability factors. We only want to be working with hotels that are doing right by the environment, and also doing right by their stakeholders and their people. And so we want to work with a smaller number of hotels, but the ones that are contributing in a really positive way. Likewise, our local partners, we've always had a very, very close bond with. But when we look at sort of secondary partners, if you like, single day tour operators and so on in each of our destinations, very specialist, you know, one person businesses quite often, we want to make sure that they're doing things the way that stands up to our values as well. So as we build back up, it is affording us this opportunity to be a bit more rigorous than we have been in the past. When you're at the coalface and the train's going at 1,000 miles an hour, it's very, very hard to stop and really consider whether you're doing the right thing or not. And we're correcting that now.
So, how do you communicate with your clients, and what is their response? Has there been a conversation about that with them yet?
Yeah, very very much so. We've got an incredibly. I've worked for a number of travel companies in my time, and tour operators, and Selective Asia's core clients that have been with them with the company for a number of years have travelled multiple times. So we have a really transparent relationship, and we're very able to go and speak to a number of clients about the ideas that we have and the projects that we're working on. Whilst Nick said earlier, the proof will be in the pudding, but the response so far has been fantastic. We've slowed things down. That happened fairly naturally because of the pandemic, but we took it a step further with redesigning the way that we communicate with people, the way that we present itineraries to people. It's much more interactive, but it's much more client focused, and we recognize that the real value that we add as consultants and specialists and experts is our time. It's making sure that if I speak to you, Marion, to design a trip to Vietnam, it's not a 5-minute conversation. It's commitment on both sides, and it's working in partnership so that you go on the trip that is perfect for you, that will be very different to anybody else's. And that comes with getting to know clients and giving them the time it takes to get to that next level. And it's been really rewarding as a sales consultant and as part of the project redesigning the process. And the feedback so far, albeit a fairly small pool, the feedback's been fantastic. People feel less pressured. They feel able to breathe. An old colleague of mine once said, we're not selling fast food, and that's something that stuck with me over a number of years. These trips, and I think sometimes we become a bit blasé about it by unfortunately because of the fact that we do it day to day. But the trips we sell are pretty good. And for most people, if you're going out to Asia for the first time, it's something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. And if you're visiting Vietnam for a second or third time, these things stay with you, and they are, they're incredibly worthwhile. Other than houses and cars,
yeah,
a trip of this nature is often the biggest thing people will purchase in a year or a 5-year period. And it's going back and recognizing the value and the impact of what we do day to day. And that's been great to get back to that passion.
It's taking the time to get into the finer details and working more with the client, slowing that process down. We're being very open about that now. If you want to quote and a price and a booking today, we're not the company for you. We want to take the time over it because we think you'll enjoy it more, and we're going to enjoy it more as well. And there's a lot of positives in that process. We want to learn about your previous trips. We want to understand what went wrong. You know, we want to hear about the funny anecdotes of or your favorite meal on a previous trip, because those little things can lead to great success on the next trip as well. And I think Aaron does himself and all of us an injustice with these trips. Are pretty good. They're absolutely brilliant, the trips we create.
Yeah, recently, it was somewhere on social media, I saw this meme. When you spend money on travel, it's the only time that you actually spend money on something that makes you richer. And
Yeah.
I think in mass tourism in the previous years, that has really gotten lost for a lot of people. On the tour management side, that I have a lot of experience with, I've seen programs where there was absolutely no time to ever exhale, and it was a very strict, fast trip. And I felt that there was not that much value in it for a lot of the participants. And I'm so happy to see that this is getting back to more of a this consciousness you guys have of this will be building memories and experiences for a lifetime, and they have to be personal and authentic, not a mass-produced thing.
Absolutely. I mean, a big part of our job, I think, is creating the opportunity for spontaneity. And when you really stop and think about it, that's the magic part of travel, isn't it? It's not what's scripted, and it's not what's on a military-esque 10-hour agenda through the day with, long car journeys in between to get from one, famous site to the next. It's actually what's in a street, 2 streets back from that famous site more often than not. It's the interaction you have with someone at a marketplace. And so I think what we're really coming to terms with is understanding when to respectfully push back a little bit. That in turn will help the planet, because it means that you're not just adding to the over-tourism problem thoughtlessly. I mean, you're never going to not, everyone's always going to want to go to Tiger's Nest when they go to Bhutan. We understand that. But try doing it a different way and ensure that they visit some other areas of Bhutan that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily go to on the sort of the bog standard 8-day tour of Bhutan, as it were. So spreading the wealth of the tourism brings to these destinations is vitally important, and that starts with us. Ultimately, we need to have done the groundwork, and we always have done, to understand where that place B is, and actually, have the courage to represent it for the benefits that it brings, rather than just, Halong Bay, very, very popular. Sure, you want to go there. Why not, talk about the next bay along, and actually sell the virtues of travel there with, just a fraction of the number of junks on the water that you'll get on Halong Bay itself.
How does the world look for you guys now in the United Kingdom? In California, we're pretty much opening up, talking about opening 100% in the large stadiums next weekend. So the world is coming back to more normal. How do you see the future for you guys? How fast do you think you can actually execute and see travel come back to a certain form?
So it's an interesting question, and it's one that we've been asking ourselves since March last year, really. The difficulty is, although as in America, similar to the UK, things are starting to open up. We are seeing the easing of lockdowns and restrictions, and we were super excited to see the green list and that Portugal was accessible again. So that, we're positive and optimistic that will continue to happen. The other side of the coin is governments in Asia opening up for tourism, and Thailand is at the moment leading the way with the kind of the Phuket travel corridor. So things may be different than they previously were, and that may not ultimately be a bad thing. I think for the time being, we're optimistic that things will improve towards the end of the year, and we're fairly comfortable with that. And certainly going into 2022, a lot of our forward bookings at the moment are late 21, early 22, and even into 2023, which is fantastic to see. But we're very positive. But we're looking forward to seeing what the new landscape will look like and adapting to it. And if that means less mass tourism, less movement of people, that can only really be a good thing.
Absolutely. And if we're big advocates of you know, when people take the trip, spend a little bit longer there and take one less trip a year. I think we've all felt guilty in the past of, you know, particularly in Europe. Europe's famous for it. I think, you know, these sort of long weekends in this another city constantly and jumping on and off a plane, you know, a lot more often than we should be. You know, adding another week on and really making the journey count in a long haul destination makes much better use of that carbon impact. At the end of the day, you're looking at a carbon impact per day score. You know, you put yourself in a much better light. You know, just to mirror Aaron's words there, I think domestically we feel that things are in pretty good shape in the UK. No one's going to say that too boldly, given, you know, the setbacks we've had time and time again. But certainly there's a growing confidence. 21st of June, we think will be the end of all restrictions, but there's you know, as there always is in the press, there's some talk around that not coming to fruition quite so soon. And long haul, we just have to be more patient. There is still continued spikes in various destinations, not just in Asia, all over the world. You know, it just keeps popping up, and you know, it's nice that finally some of the wealthier governments around the world are starting to understand the need for global vaccinations to really solve this problem. It comes at a time where they've clearly taken care of their own populations first, which is a little sad to see, but better late than never. And certainly I hope that, I know the US government are starting to donate large numbers of vaccinations. The UK a bit slow on that, I think, and other European countries as well. We need to really pick that up, because this doesn't go anywhere until everyone's vaccinated, and we all need to pull together on that one. So 2022 we're very positive about. We see some really great travel happening in 2022, and more considered travel. You know, people have had a long time to think about where they want to go next, and they're not just going to blindly jump on a plane to the first destination that comes across the screen in front of them. They're going to know where they want to go, and they're going to, you know, we think really make it count. And that's certainly the conversations that Aaron and a lot of the other team are having at the moment reflect that.
Last but not least, you're UK based. Most of your clients, I assume, are in the UK, but you are incredible experts for the Asian market.
Yeah.
Would you be open to working with clients from other countries? Could that be an international?
Pre-pandemic, rather. Actually, 20% of our clients were from the US. And a number of clients each year from a lot of the expat destinations, so, you know, Dubai's, elsewhere in the Middle East, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on. But yeah, we do work with clients from around the world, and wish to continue to do so. In fact, it may well be, with the way that we're now working in this far more dispersed format, that actually we'll have team members working from other parts of the globe as well, which would be really fantastic to see. I'm longing for the day that some of the team are basing themselves out in Asia for a month here or a month there, or simply that they work in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or wherever it may be, and are helping clients in these destinations, because they're more naturally on the clock.
Wonderful. Last but not least, very, very last but not least, what's the best way to contact you? And of course, I will be linking that in the descriptions, so that people also have, you know, listeners and viewers, please have a look below. But what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Sure. Well, web address is www.selectiveasia.com, contact@selectiveasia.com, and then it's +44 1273 670 001.
All of that will be below. Thank you so very much. I'm really very happy and encouraged to see how tourism is evolving, and you guys at the forefront. And it's been an incredibly wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marion.
Thanks for your time, Marion. Take care.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for subscribing to my podcast. Let's travel!